we're all so much, we're so far into our career now that it's not like we already went through the growing pains.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, you're not listening to this the way that I felt that it should be listened. Or what about, hey, man, I need more of me. Me. Right? And so that shit doesn't go on anymore.
James, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, a new Dream Theater album is always a big event. So, but it's also not the first time that you're doing this. This is the 16th album for the band already. How are you feeling in a cycle like this? Like, you've seen it all, or is there still something to it?
Well, I think, the music being new and fresh and on any given album, I mean, you're excited about that. And that fact alone is you're trying to, create stories around something that you've created that will excite everyone and not only yourself. So I think, it's like getting into a new book. Even though you've read 1,000 books or more, it doesn't matter. It's something new. You're going to go into another story, the way I look at it is it's someone's storytelling. And for me, this is us telling the story of why we put together these songs and these lyrics and why we're doing what we are. And it's like picking up a new novel for sure.
Yeah. Now this novel is going to get maybe more attention than previous novels for obvious reasons with the changes that happened.
Sure.
Does that for a band as experienced as you guys, does that still bring an extra level of pressure at all?
No, I mean, you're consciously aware of the fact that, everybody's anticipating such a release and everyone's anxious and everyone's excited and oh my God, what's this going to be? I mean, but besides that, you're still going into the studio like you have in the past. And it's all about communicating, and in this sense, we, having established that we were it was more or less going to be a thematic album. So the theme of the lyrics being talking about sleep disorders, parasomnia, that kind of gave us that was the catalyst to really put us in a great headspace as far as what we felt the music should be represent. And so, I think it's like everyone was like, well, you guys must have felt a lot of pressure. And once we go into the studio and we shut that door and we're in our little cocoon, it's all about what we've done in the past. And it's just a matter of, let's just focus on the music where we think it needs to go. We have all these seeds or ideas. So let's embellish those ideas. Let's bring them to fruition, so to speak, and just focus on that and nothing else. So you acknowledge it, but at the same time, it's, let's press the button and be who we are and what we've been all these years and just do what we do best. And that is, let's create an album. Yeah.
Let's, in this interview, also do that. Like, let's focus on the music. Let's focus on the stories. Let's acknowledge the change one time. So I'm going to ask you one question that I'm sure you're getting every interview, and then we'll move away from that. With the let's call it the classic lineup back together after quite some time. Let's just do one question about that. What made now the right time for that?
I just think it's a series of, like if you think about any band out there, more than likely it's almost like it's inevitable that you're going to come back around and there's going to be the time that avails itself or that produces itself. And it just feels like the right time. And that's the way it was with us. I think there's some things that were already in motion that slowly start to creak open that door. And I mean, if you go back and you start thinking, Mike had already recorded John Petrucci's solo album. He recorded he went on tour with him for that. He also did the Liquid Tension album. So all these things kind of like, they bring a little bit more focus as to, oh, that's the one of the original members coming back. He's working with one of the members of Dream Theater. Well, with Liquid Tension, two of the members.
Right.
So it just kind of starts to become something that you can't ignore.
Yeah,
and I think too, one of the big things is that Mike and I resolved our differences, and we kind of and we kind of patched up all the bullshit and drama and soap opera that's going on, which a lot of bands, that's, hey, let's face it, a lot of bands break up and then they slowly come back together because they mend all those wounds, unless you're Pink Floyd, which is very unfortunate. That is unfortunate, but anyways, each man in its own right. They're extremely talented. So, but so I think it was just a collection or a sequences of, of things that were happening that was kind of just painting the picture for us. And then it was obvious, and then it was undeniable that, hey guys, let's just rethink this. After we had finished the last world tour, it was a matter of the four of us being like myself, John Petrucci, John Myung, Jordan Rudess, and sitting down, having a conversation and going, now it just seems like the perfect time for us to, and that's, with all due respect to Mike Mangini, phenomenal musician, incredible drummer. We, proud of those 5 albums. They were great albums. And hey, it's just a matter of bringing back the original lineup. The original lineup, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, it's not the original lineup if you really want to get
classic
specific.
Lineup. The classic lineup.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, what you're saying is, you've to resolve those differences. You've matured. You've been able to work through that. I'm going to use that as a bit of a forced segue to the music, because this album kicks off really interestingly. Like, get a heavy opener on this album with "In the Arms of Morpheus," followed by "Night Terror" that's been released already. Maybe a little bit more of a classic Dream Theater song than the first song.
Sure. Sure.
But there's, with a band like you guys, there's obviously an insane amount of virtuoso to display. Is that a big conversation on who gets the spotlight first? Because it does take 7.5 minutes or so on this album before we hear you for the first time. That's a conversation because it's quite smooth, and it's just, it's always been about communicating what we feel makes absolute sense. We know that we're like you said, the instrumentation of Dream Theater is a big thing. It's a big focus. And when you're a progressive band as us, or progressive metal, we're very eclectic. So when it's natural for us to do something like like Dance of Eternity, for example, or something like that. So in the Arms of Morpheus, I mean, it sets it up, especially being this thematic album that we've created. You start to hear all the motifs that are going to present themselves in a song way or just thematic way, that there'll be reoccurring themes throughout the album, and what creates each and every song, so to speak. So it's a foreshadowing, a harbinger of what's to come in some ways. So I think it just makes, when we have those conversations, it's natural. It's like, hang on a second, guys, with the kind of album that we're doing, why don't we, create something that will foreshadow and excite the fans, because this is something that you're going to experience in a more elaborate unfolding once we get into the actual songs of the album. Yeah. And not that, the precursor to all this, In the Arms of Morpheus, is not a song. It is a song, of course, but it just really sets it up. And that's true Dream Theater, I don't know, spectacular, in the sense that we want things to be very cinematic and very dramatic and very theatrical. I mean, this album it epitomizes who and what we are as a band and the kind of music that we write. And this album really shows all the different facets of who and what we are. Well, and throughout the album, where you've got a bunch of instrumental parts, not necessarily full songs, sometimes full songs, but sometimes longer parts, and they can be more mellow, they can be very intense. It kind of builds that theme, I find, as well, of that, that little sleep paralysis that you're talking about, where you kind of go, this whole album seems to ebb and flow, and not just in between songs, but within songs. Like, I think my favorite song on the album so far, I've had a chance to listen to it, I think it's Dead Sleep, where within
Dead Sleep, I love that song,
it flows by itself, like in and out a lot.
That's awesome,
I think you almost chuckled a bit when you're saying, like, oh, well, we play progressive metal, or we're a prog band. What is prog metal? Can you tell me that?
Well, I'm just going to simplify it. It's progressive music, which is very, like I said, when you're a progressive band, you have the freedom of going anywhere you want to go musically. Like, there's no constraints, you can bust open whatever the hell you want that will support what you feel is exactly your goal, or where you want to go musically at that particular moment. So there's no barriers when you're a progressive band, and you're able to also show this virtuosity that encompasses most progressive bands, because there's a little bit more musicianship going on. And you're able to be a storyteller in a deeper, more profound sense. So that's it. And the metal is something, we've always been, each and every one of us, like if you listen to a band like Rush, all the earlier albums, they had that edge, they had that aggressiveness, but they could still be progressive and amazing storytellers, or growing up listening to bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and Iron Maiden and Metallica. Well, that's going to bring in all these things that are a more aggressive stance, and hitting you over the head with something that just really gives you that adrenaline rush, and it's aggressive and heavy and dark. So we encompass all, and that's who we are. So that's why we were given this title, the progressive metal giants like Dream Theater. And it's like, okay, so it is true, because we do incorporate all of those elements. And it's a beautiful, I think, marriage, because it just allows you to even be that much more expressive musically. You don't just have to be all this, progressive band, period, that, if you get a little too heavy, it's like, whoa, man, that's not like them. That's always been who and what we are, which is a beautiful thing, because it just, once again, it's just absolute freedom of being able to push the envelope as far as we want.
Yeah. If we all agree
there's no
that
constraints. Yeah.
If we all agree that there should be no constraints and no limits to creativity and expression in prog music and prog metal, does it make you smile, or do you think it's sometimes annoying? How do you look at? It seems like the broader prog metal genre is, for a lot of bands, it seems that they're actually trying so hard to stick to a formula, which then often is called, they're just trying to copy what Dream Theater is doing. It almost feels to me that there are few genres like prog metal that often put so many limitations on itself, because it's like, now you have to sound this way to be labeled prog. I find it similar with black metal, where it's like, it should be individualism and expression, but then so many bands start sounding exactly the same because they want to be true prog or true black metal. How do you look at that?
I think, first of all, it's flattering when you're hearing these bands do this, but I think what a lot of bands fall prey to is they overthink it, and it's really that simple. So they're going, if we're going to be somewhat like that, then, hear what they did here, and this is exactly what we should be doing right now, instead of just letting themselves go, wait a minute, why do we have to be so specific as to thinking that this is the way that the song has to be in order for us to be looked upon the same way that Dream Theater, or anybody else for that matter, is looked upon that has been given some credit. Right. But in the way that you can give it even more credence of who and what you are, it's just listen to yourself, and don't worry about where it goes. And if you do have those elements that encompass both progressive and metal, but it's done sincerely and genuinely, then you know what? It's going to resonate that much more or more deeper with the listener, because it's true. You know, there's no pretentious air to it, or there's, you know, no phonyism. Like, you know, phonyism, is that a word?
It is so. Now. It is now.
Yeah, it is now. But and then it just makes you more disingenuous, right? When you start to try, you know, because now you're being scientific. You're not being just somebody that you're this you know, conduit that's taking out of yourself something that you felt, something that you heard, or whatever, and you're trying to put it down so that it's something that will, you know, ultimately bring you closer to your fans or listeners, whoever happens to come by it. And I think that's what it is they're overthinking or overanalyzing where they have to go, and they've forgotten to listen to themselves as a musician.
This album, what for me really struck when I was listening to it the first time was, I mean, with any prog music, you expect layers and a lot to go on and what have you. But the production and the mix of this album is so clear. Like, I feel like I can really hear everybody. I can listen to the same song twice, and I can allow myself to just focus more on the drumming, for example. And the next listen, I can focus more on the guitar, where, again, sometimes happens with prog bands where so much is on display that it becomes really hard to kind of really hear the music, if you will, because it becomes one big soup, if you will.
Yeah. Like, I know what you're saying. There's separation between, but at the same time, the blend creates where each element or each instrument and vocal is easily represented in a fair and balanced equilibrium, you know? And I think that's always been something that, you know, like John Petrucci is producing in that, and he's, you know, a very big audiophile, and he really listens to that, and he, you know, that's one of the reasons why it works out so well, and he does an admirable job as a producer, is because, yes, first and foremost, he's a band member, but at the same time, he has to realize that if he's going to be given this hat, being the producer, that everyone has to be represented fairly. So then he has to be able to step outside of the band and then say, well, here's what I need to do to make sure that this band is heard under the best possible light sonically. And, you know, that's having a lot to do with his communication with who happens to be mixing it, who happens to be mastering it, that nothing can be lost in there, so that, like you said, it becomes soup and you're like, what the hell? You know, I can't really hear the song for what it was meant to be heard. Because if you lose all those elements and it becomes muddy or mush, then everything that was intended is lost. And then you're not giving that song its true representation or credit. And so that's a thing with, you know, that kind of has always been extremely important to Dream Theater, is that, you know, let's write these songs and let's compose what we do. But at the end of it all, if it's not heard properly, then
what's the point?
It's such what's the point? It's a disappointment.
Dude, these conversations where a band member is also a producer and you have to have those conversations on, like, hey, we need this for the greater good, if you will. Or you mentioned maturity earlier in this conversation, and as the lineup was coming back together, are these conversations that are also easier today than they would have been 20 years ago?
I mean, if those conversations have to be had, but, like, you know, we've been doing this for so long that I think all those things are considered. You know, there's consideration for everything at all times. And if it happens to be missed for whatever reason, whatever that particular thing is that's missing, it will be, you know, voiced. And but we're all so much, you know, we're so far into our career now that it's not like we already went through the growing pains. Right. It was kind of like, well, you're not listening to this the way that I felt that it should be listened. Or what about, hey, man, I need more of me. Me. Right. And so that shit doesn't go on anymore. It's more or less like, hey, when I was listening to the mix, I noticed that, remember that what we had done in this section or whatever that I'm not hearing that sample the way I wanted to, or, remember Jordan was doing this cool thing that sounded very Arabian-like. Well, I'm not really hearing it for its full worth. And so there might be something like that, but man, it's like extremely rare. Yeah. Okay. Extremely rare.
We're gonna see you play a lot this year. I think every important festival has already announced you guys as playing. Hellfest is you guys at Hellfest, Graspop, all these great festivals. There's also obviously a big tour coming up, or continuing to play shows, I should say. What can we expect? You have an insane catalog. You have every fan comes to your show with a wish list that is 20 pages long. Some of the songs are 30 minutes long and you won't be able to play them. It must be insanely hard for a band like you guys when there's a new album to put together a set list, especially if it's for a festival. But what can we expect from Dream Theater Show in 2025?
Well, obviously we've passed the torch on to Mike Portnoy again. And, the way that I look at it is he does such an amazing job all the time because first and foremost, Mike is the biggest fan of Dream Theater. And so he's very analytical as to how he goes about presenting a set list and establishing and solidifying what he thinks is best for us at that particular moment. It being, okay, we're doing North America, so maybe we should be doing some of these songs. Hey, we're doing the big festival shows, so during the festival shows, we need to bring out these songs. So everything is thought of, and he's constantly internalizing what would be best for us. Because like you said, you have 16 albums, that's daunting to some people. That would be like, holy shit, where do you start? And then the fans are going to be pissed off if we don't play this or that or this. So what Mike has always been able to create is something where everyone can walk away and go, oh my God, I was so glad that they played this. That's one of my favorite tracks. And they're satisfied. Like right now, currently we're playing the Octavarium. I mean, that's a huge epic. But the fans are eating it up. They're gobbling it up because they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're playing that again. I absolutely love that song from beginning to end. There's so many different moods and dynamics throughout, and it just, conjures up all this emotion within. So he's, when we're doing stuff like this and we're coming up to any given, and now we have to think about the new album. The Parasomnia is coming out, so we want to introduce more and more. Then we got the Shadow Man incident. So you got this big epic, which I think is personally one of our best epics ever written. So there's that to consider, and we all know that we'd love to be doing that. But I think it comes down to Mike is fully 100% invested in what he does and what he creates. And, it's nothing random. There's so much thought put into it. And that's why I think the set lists come out and they're well constructed, extremely well constructed. And they go down like gangbusters live. I mean, it's just huge. Everyone is feeling so ecstatic with the result.
Awesome. Well, James, we'll have lots of opportunities, everybody watching this, to see you guys on a stage this year, which is very exciting. 40 years of the band, new album, lots of shows. It's an exciting year, and I just want to say thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule to answer our questions. Thank you so much. Very excited for the album coming out and everybody to listen to the full thing. And I wish you guys all the best with this cycle and with all these, ongoing 40th anniversary shows that you're doing. Yeah,
well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that, Jasper. And I think you need some new cymbals.
I know,
That's cool,
I know.
That's very cool.
There's 3 on the wall here.
Oh, that's awesome.
But there's
so I take it you play
there's
drums?
room for more. No. This is my musical talents were wasted on a recorder in high school that we had to learn, and I have a guitar somewhere that I never really learned how to play. So my passion came out in doing stuff like this, and awesome. All around me are signed memorabilia.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, man, we need people like you as well. You know, you gotta propel this stuff forward and make people aware of it. Yeah, for sure, man. Well, exactly. Thanks, man. Okay, well, great talking to you, and I guess we'll see you at one of the shows.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James.
Okay.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.